What if the reason you struggle in relationships has nothing to do with who you are, but everything to do with what you were taught to believe about yourself? Most of us were never handed a manual for human connection. We learned by watching, by stumbling, by getting hurt. And somewhere along the way, many of us picked up a quiet, persistent feeling that we just weren't quite enough, not interesting enough, not confident enough, not worthy of the closeness we actually crave. That feeling has a name. And, more importantly, it has a solution. Over a century ago, a psychologist named Alfred Adler was already pointing to the root of almost every social struggle people face. Not trauma, not personality flaws, not bad luck. A single, learnable skill. He called it social interest. And by the end of this video, you'll understand not only what it means, but how to start building it, starting today. Stay with me, because this is one of those ideas that quietly changes everything. Adler believed that the deepest human need isn't pleasure, and it isn't power. It's belonging. The feeling that we are genuinely part of something, that we matter to others, that we contribute. When that need goes unmet, something in us tightens. We become defensive, withdrawn, or we overcompensate by dominating conversations, seeking constant validation, or avoiding vulnerability altogether. Sound familiar? Most of us recognize ourselves somewhere in that picture. Here's what makes Adler's view so quietly radical. He didn't think social difficulties were fixed traits. He saw them as habits, patterns of thinking and behaving that were developed in response to early experiences, and that can therefore be changed. That's not just a comforting thought. It's a deeply practical one. Let's start at the beginning. Adler observed that many people who struggle socially carry what he called a feeling of inferiority. Not necessarily low self-esteem in the obvious sense. It's more like a background hum of not measuring up. Maybe it began in childhood, being overlooked, criticized, or simply never encouraged. Maybe it was reinforced in school, at work, in a relationship. Over time, it becomes a lens through which we interpret everything. When someone doesn't text back quickly, we assume we're annoying. When we walk into a room full of strangers, we feel immediately exposed. When a conversation goes quiet, we fill the silence with anxiety. This isn't weakness. It's a very human response to a very human wound. But here's where Adler parts ways with the idea that we're simply victims of our history. He believed that the way we move through the world is a choice. Not always a conscious one, but a choice nonetheless. And choice implies possibility. The path forward, in his view, isn't self-improvement in the narrow sense. Not performing better or seeming more impressive. It's a genuine shift in orientation, away from the self toward others. This is the heart of what he meant by social interest. Not sociability, not being outgoing or charming. Social interest is the capacity to genuinely care about the people around you, to be curious about them, to contribute to their well-being in small or large ways, to feel that you are fundamentally on the same team as every other human being. When that orientation is present, something remarkable happens. The anxiety that normally precedes social interaction starts to lose its grip. Because the anxious person is, almost by definition, focused inward, monitoring themselves, calculating how they're being perceived. The moment attention genuinely shifts to the other person, that self-monitoring quiets down. Think about a time when you were so absorbed in helping someone, or so genuinely interested in what they were saying, that you forgot to feel awkward. That's social interest at work. And the good news is that it can be practiced. Here's one of the simplest ways to begin. The next time you're in a conversation, give yourself one task. Find out something genuinely interesting about this person. Not for networking reasons, not to seem curious, actually mean it. People are astonishing when you look closely enough. Everyone carries a story, a private expertise, a quiet passion, a grief they've moved through. Most of us are simply too caught in our own heads to notice. When you approach a conversation with real curiosity, the other person feels it. and they relax, and you relax, and suddenly the whole painful performance of social interaction becomes something closer to genuine contact. This brings us to another piece of Adler's thinking that's worth sitting with. He believed that most social difficulties aren't really about other people at all. They're about what he called the life task of community. Each of us, he said, is faced with three fundamental life tasks: work, love, and friendship. These aren't things that happen to us. They're ongoing challenges we navigate every day. And how we approach them reflects our underlying beliefs about ourselves and about the world. Someone who avoids close friendships isn't simply introverted. They may have learned, somewhere, that closeness leads to disappointment or abandonment. Someone who constantly clashes with colleagues may be operating from a belief that cooperation means losing. Someone who never quite feels at ease in social settings may be carrying a private conviction that they're fundamentally different from everyone else. These beliefs feel like facts. They're not. Adler was insistent on this point. Our early conclusions about ourselves are not truths. They are interpretations. Interpretations made by small people trying to make sense of a confusing world, and interpretations can be revisited. This is where the work becomes both challenging and genuinely hopeful. It requires a willingness to ask, what do I actually believe about myself in relation to others? Do I believe people are basically good and that most of them would welcome my presence? Or do I believe that I'm likely to be judged, dismissed, or misunderstood? Neither of these beliefs is neutral. Each one shapes every social interaction you have, often before you've said a single word. The shift Adler points toward isn't positive thinking in a shallow sense. It's a more honest reckoning with the fact that the story you're telling about yourself might be outdated. It served a purpose once, but it may be costing you more than you realize now. One of the most practical concepts he left us with is what's sometimes called the encouragement principle. Adler noticed that people don't change through criticism or pressure. They change through encouragement, through feeling seen, valued, capable. This is true in therapy. It's true in parenting. And it's profoundly true in everyday relationships. When you offer genuine encouragement to someone, you aren't flattering them. You're recognizing something real. You're saying, I see what you're capable of. And that recognition has a remarkable effect. It tends to call out exactly what it recognizes. But here's the part that often gets overlooked. The encouragement principle applies to yourself too. Many people who struggle in relationships are quietly, relentlessly hard on themselves. Every stumble in conversation is mentally reviewed and condemned. Every moment of awkwardness becomes evidence for the prosecution. This inner harshness doesn't make you more careful or more socially skilled. It makes you more contracted, more fearful, more focused on avoiding failure than on actually connecting. Learning to extend to yourself the same basic warmth you might offer a good friend isn't self-indulgence. It's a precondition for genuine openness with others. Because here's the truth, Adler returned to again and again. Connection isn't a performance, it's a willingness. A willingness to be present, to be curious, to show up even imperfectly. The person across from you in any given moment isn't looking for you to be flawless. They're looking for you to be real. They're hoping, in their own quiet way, to feel a little less alone. And so are you. That mutual longing is not a vulnerability. It's the whole point. Adler's vision of the psychologically healthy person wasn't someone without fears or flaws. It was someone who had developed enough trust and belonging to take the risk of genuine connection. Someone who had shifted from the question of how do I appear to the question of how can I contribute. That shift doesn't happen overnight, but it does happen. And it starts in small moments that don't look particularly dramatic. It's a conversation you stay present for, rather than rehearsing your next line. A moment of conflict where you choose curiosity over defensiveness. A vulnerability you allow yourself to voice rather than carefully conceal. These are not grand gestures. They are the fabric of a relational life. And if you take nothing else from everything Adler gave us, take this: the life you want with other people, the ease, the warmth, the sense of genuine belonging. It isn't reserved for people who were born confident or naturally charming. It is available to anyone willing to practice the shift from self-focus to genuine interest in others. That shift is social interest. And it is, in the end, what all the richest human connections are made of. If this resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear this. Don't forget to like the video, and if you want more videos like this, make sure to subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.